Jehovah's Witnesses, I would like to give you a homework assignment of sorts. And we'll get to that in a second here, but first I would like to line out the premise. Now, as you should well know, we're supposedly being doled out our spiritual food from the faithful and discreet slave class. Now, this faithful and discreet slave is outlined by Jesus in Matthew chapter 24 and then verses 45 to 47. And Jesus has this to say. He says, "Who really is the faithful and discreet slave whom his master appointed over his domestics, to give them their food at the proper time? Happy is that slave if his master on arriving finds him doing so. Truly I say to you, he will appoint him over all his belongings." Now, note that that scripture was stated in the form of a question. Who really is the faithful and discreet slave? Well, Jehovah's Witnesses, we need not wonder, because the Watchtower of 11/1/2007, page 30, paragraph 12, has this to say. It identifies the faithful and discreet slave for us. Hooray, Watchtower! A second example of deep things that have been revealed to us concerns God's purpose to select 144,000 from among mankind. We accept the teaching that all of the anointed ones living on earth at any given time constitute the faithful and discreet slave that Jesus said would provide timely food for his domestics, and they cite the scripture at Matthew 24:45. Now, who are the faithful and discreet slave? The faithful and discreet slave constitute the anointed ones living on earth at any given time. Those are the faithful and discreet slave, and you can double check me just to make sure that I'm not lying. This is the given Watchtower interpretation. Now, we turn to the Watchtower of 11/14/2009, page 14, paragraph 3, and it has this to say. One way to find our place in the congregation and give evidence that we treasure it is to cooperate fully with the faithful and discreet slave. Oh, wait a minute. And its representative, the governing body. So cooperate fully with the faithful and discreet slave and its representative, the governing body. So, interesting. In this article, we find that even though the Watchtower has identified the faithful and discreet slave, now a representative comes into the picture. And it's interesting also to note that the governing body is a title which finds no root at all within Scripture. There is no governing body in the Scripture. We turn to another Watchtower article in Watchtower 4/1/2007, page 28, paragraph 11, which says this. Today, Jesus directs us by means of the faithful and discreet slave represented by its governing body and the appointed elders. Out of respect for the chief shepherd, Jesus Christ, we heed Paul's counsel, have regard for those working hard among you and presiding over you, and the Lord admonishing you. So here we have this gaping hole in logic, because we find now, and there's a pattern that's being repeated here. We find that the faithful and discreet slave is being represented by the governing body, but it never goes into explicit detail as to how this governing body is elected and where this governing body is provided for in Scripture. And so, get your pens and pencils ready, boys and girls, because this is the homework assignment that I have for you. Where in Scripture does it provide for representatives to the faithful and discreet slave? And if the Scripture does in fact make a provision for such representation, where does it line out the appointment process for such representatives? Now, I'll state it again just so it's driven home. Where in Scripture does it provide for representatives to the faithful and discreet slave? And if the Scripture does make such a provision, where does it line out the appointment process? I look forward to your responses, and if I'm wrong, I will post officially a retraction of all my statements. I look forward to hearing from you.